So thanks everyone for joining us today as we celebrate 90 trips around the bases for our Russell E. Diethrick Jr. And in honor of Russ, I would ask us all to stand and give him a round of our applause to kick us off today. As so many of these events that we've had in this room take place, we can't help but thank our friends here at the Robert H. Jackson Center for hosting us, and the man behind the microphone, the screen, the other screens, the cameras, Ed Tomasini. Thank you so much, Ed. You're going to have the opportunity today to hear from a lot of folks who had a hand in putting today together. So my role in throwing out the first pitch, if you will, I thought I'd set us up for today's celebration of all things Russ by grounding us in the year 1934, the year that brought us our own beloved Mr. Baseball. So picture it. Franklin D. Roosevelt was president. The world's population was 2.25 billion people. You could purchase a gallon of gas for 10 cents. You could purchase a dozen eggs for 33 cents. A new car would run you about $575. At the box office, you might have been watching Claudette Colbert in It Happened One Night and Cleopatra in the same year, or you were appreciating Alfred Hitchcock's The Man Who Knew Too Much. Dance marathons were still all the rage, and young couples were dancing cheek to cheek to songs like Smoke Gets in Your Eyes by Paul Whiteman, Cocktails for Two by Duke Ellington, and my favorite, which is a little foreshadowing, June in January by Bing Crosby. In addition to our favorite son of Jamestown, here are a few other beloved people who were born in 1934. Jane Goodall, Carl Sagan, Shirley MacLaine, Sophia Loren, and Frankie Valli. So now that you're all warmed up and ready to take some swings, I'll toss the first pitch to Mayor Kim Eklund.
I think there really aren't enough words to describe Russ, but I'm going to try and start. I do want to just make a quick little speech about him. We struggled in the office today about finalizing this proclamation because I didn't really want it to be 50 pages. I wasn't sure I could keep everybody's interest, but you're definitely worthy of it. Good afternoon. Today we gather to celebrate a man whose dedication to baseball and youth sports has left an incredible legacy, not only here in Jamestown, but across the country. Russell E. Diethrick Jr., known affectionately as Mr. Baseball, has spent a lifetime building opportunities for young athletes to grow through the game he deeply loves. Russ was born October 9th, 1934, the very day that the final game of the 1934 World Series, where the Cardinals triumphed over the Tigers in an 11-0 blowout. It seems only fitting that on a day marked by baseball greatness, Russ entered the world. As a left-hander, Russ has often joked, a left-hander can only do certain things in baseball. You can play outfield, pitch, or first base, but you cannot do it all. He knew early on that he'd have to have a successful team. You need to trust others to do their part. And that is exactly what Russ has done. He has built successful teams, both on and off the field. Russ has served as an integral part of the Babe Ruth League, International, and still remains a driving force with the Babe Ruth World Series of Jamestown. Whether the Director of Development for the Babe Ruth League, to Tournament Director, Board Member, and even onto the Executive Committee, Russ understood that baseball was about more than the game itself. It was about teamwork, community, and giving back. Russ's influence on the Babe Ruth League is immeasurable. As Director of Development from 1991 to 1993, and later being elected to the Babe Ruth League Hall of Fame in 1997, His contribution shaped the lives of countless young athletes. Upon hearing from Greg and him asking me to say a few words today, especially about Babe Ruth, I immediately reached out to Stephen Tellefson, who is the president and CEO of the Babe Ruth League, and he really wanted me to share this message. On behalf of the entire Babe Ruth League family, we wanted to extend our warmest wishes to Russ for a very happy 90th birthday. Russ has been an incredibly dedicated volunteer and has played a major role in the success of our organization, and one that we still enjoy today. His induction into the Babe Ruth Hall of Fame in 1997 was a profound moment for all of us, as it was well-deserved for a person of his caliber. Additionally, Russ served on the International Board of Directors for over 20 years, continuing to contribute to the growth and success of Babe Ruth League. Throughout his life, Russ has been more than just a leader. He has been a mentor, a friend, and most importantly, a fan of every young athlete who has ever stepped onto the field or had a chance to meet him. And while he may not have been able to play every position, there's no doubt that he has been the MVP for decades. So Russ, on behalf of everyone here, and especially the Babe Ruth World Series Committee, we thank you for your humility, your leadership, and your underlying passion for baseball. Your legacy is not just one of wins and losses, it's one of lives changed, communities strengthened, and a love for the game that continues to inspire all of us. Happy 90th, and here's to many more innings to come. That's personal. Russ, I can't thank you enough for your leadership on the Babe Ruth World Series. I was fortunate enough at the age of 13 to first be a then called princess in 1981. How things have changed. However, the mark that left in my 13 years of age and the impact you had on my father is still with me, and I am honored to serve with you. So I have a proclamation on behalf of the office of the Mayor of Kimberly-Acklin and the City of Jamestown, honoring Russell Diethrick, Diethrick Jr. on his 90th birthday. Whereas the City of Jamestown proudly celebrates, okay, this is a little smaller, sorry. Whew. Whereas the City of Jamestown proudly celebrates the 90th birthday of Russell E. Diethrick Jr., a truly remarkable individual whose lifelong commitment and service have left an indelible mark on our community. Having lived in Jamestown since the age of 5, Russell exemplifies the spirit of community, civic engagement, and enduring passion for youth sports, especially baseball. And whereas Russell E. Diethrick Jr., a proud 1952 graduate of Jamestown High School, has devoted his life to serving the city of Jamestown and its residents. In 1958, he began his remarkable career with the city as Assistant Recreation Director. His leadership, dedication, and vision for enhancing recreational opportunities led to his appointment as Recreation Director from 1964 to 1966. By 1967, his responsibilities grew to include oversight of the Parks Department, and in 1971, his role expanded even further to the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation, a position he held until 1991. His legacy continues to shape Jamestown's public spaces and recreational programs. And whereas lovingly known as Mr. Baseball, Russell has devoted his life to the sport and the Jamestown Babe Ruth League, earning induction into the Babe Ruth League Hall of Fame in 1997. He played a pivotal role in hosting the first Babe Ruth 13-year-old World Series in 1980 at the stadium now named in his honor, Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. Russell became involved in the Jamestown Babe Ruth League in 1955 and held various leadership positions from 1958 to 1997, including president of the league and tournament director of both the state and regional levels. His expertise and leadership in the sports led him to serve on the advisory board of the Babe Ruth League Incorporated in 1980, and he proudly served as the host president for 18 Babe Ruth World Series in almost 40 years from 1980 to 2023. And Russell's passion for baseball and his tireless work in the community have been a beacon of civic pride for Jamestown. His leadership has helped establish Jamestown as the central hub for youth baseball tournaments, creating cherished memories for youth athletes and their families. And whereas in addition to his love for baseball, Russell has served the Jamestown community in numerous other ways, receiving the Jamestown YMCA's Volunteer Service Awards in 1961 and 1965, and most importantly, being recognized as Boss of the Year in 1977 by the New York State Division of Secretaries Association. He was also a founding member of our local Office of the Aging Advisory Board in 1973, and 2023 received the Governor's Exemplary Volunteer Service Award for over 45 years volunteering in our community. Whereas he's admired for his humility, integrity, and teamwork, Russell's leadership has inspired others and made him a beloved figure in Jamestown, known for always prioritizing community over personal recognition. Now therefore, I, Kimberly A. Eklund, Mayor of the City of Jamestown, do hereby proclaim October 9th, 2024, as Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Day in the City of Jamestown in honor of your 90th birthday and remarkable contributions to our community and the Jamestown Babe Ruth League. Today, as we honor Russ, we celebrate not only milestones of his incredible journey, but also the profound legacy of kindness and generosity he has instilled in Jamestown alongside his deep-rooted love for the game of baseball. Thank you, Corey.
So I think our leadoff batter hit it out of the park and sets up a tough act to follow for batter number 2, our county executive, PJ Wendell.
So in a baseball metaphor, I won't be able to finish the inning, so I'll have Andy step in a little bit. Words matter, and it doesn't matter at what age you hear them. But I had just gotten back from Europe and was competing still in my 40s, and I was asked to do a radio show with Russ and Andrew Hill at the radio station. And talking a little bit about my life, where I was and what I was doing, and pursuing a degree and looking to be a school administrator. And at some point, I think we were wrapping up, and Russ looked at me and kind of put his hand on my arm, and he goes, "We don't interview principals on this show." And it made a profound statement because what I thought I was doing wasn't all that much, but I think it did mean a lot. And when somebody with Russ's integrity and notoriety and experience in sports says something, then you really take it to heart. So on behalf of everything you've done for the community, but more so for me, though, Russ, thank you so much. The words mean a tremendous amount. Again, tough act to follow. The mayor really did a great job. But on behalf of the county and the Office of the County Executive, we have a letter of commendation for Russ. Whereas Russell E. Diethrick was born on October 9th, 1934 in Patton, Pennsylvania, and moved to Jamestown when he was 5. And whereas Mr. Diethrick, a graduate of Jamestown High School, where he played baseball for Coach Al Ayers. And whereas Mr. Diethrick's lifelong baseball led to his dedication to growing the sport in Chautauqua County. And whereas Mr. Diethrick has demonstrated unwavering commitment to excellence in his professional career, embodying integrity, leadership, and innovation in every endeavor. And whereas throughout his remarkable journey, Mr. Diethrick has played an instrumental role in numerous organizations, selflessly contributing his time, expertise, and resources to enhance the lives of countless individuals and families. And whereas Mr. Diethrick served our nation in the U.S. Army Reserves. And whereas his dedication to over 40 organizations, including Retired Senior Volunteer Program, Council on Alcoholism, American Cancer Society, the Jamestown Parks and Recreation and Conservation Commission, March of Dimes, United Way, Boys and Girls Club, the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging Advisory Board since its creation in 1973, exemplifying the spirit of service and generosity that defines our community. And June, he's still found time for you, right? And whereas Mr. Diethrick shared a fulfilling life with his beloved family, celebrating cherished memories that will resonate for generations. And whereas on this momentous occasion of his 90th birthday, we gather to honor Russ Diethrick for his indomitable spirit, remarkable achievements, and lasting impact on our community. And whereas we express our deepest gratitude for the wisdom, guidance, and generosity you have shared, we celebrate the enduring legacy he continues to build. And whereas known fondly as Jamestown's Mr. Baseball, Mr. Diethrick continues to inspire with his remarkable achievements, including induction to the Babe Ruth League Hall of Fame and receiving the 2023 New York State Governor's Exemplary Volunteer Service Award. Now, therefore, I, Paul N. Wendell Jr., Chautauqua County Executive, do hereby congratulate and recognize Russell E. Diethrick as we honor him today, and let us remember the profound impact one individual can have on the lives of so many. Happy 90th birthday, Russ. In witness whereof I have hereto set my hand and caused the seal of the great county of Chautauqua to be fixed this 9th day of October 2024. On behalf of myself and the residents of a great county, congratulations, happy birthday, and thank you so much. As customary, when I'm asked to throw out the first pitch that I can't do without hitting the dirt, I'm going to have to tap and get the right-hander in for my relief.
Thank you, PJ. And I'm not on your program. I'm a pitch hitter. And Russ, between PJ and the mayor, we've heard almost your entire history, but they left out a little bit. So I was going to fill in the rest of the story. So all you know that he was born in 1934. And Russ Diethrick started walking in 1935. And the rest is history. Russ, most of us never get the opportunity to have our accolades reviewed in public. We have to wait until we're dead. So I hope you don't feel like this is a wake, and I hope you appreciate that we really are glad that you're alive and well. And on behalf of all my colleagues in the Assembly, it is really my honor to give you a certificate of recognition from the New York State Assembly acknowledging 90 years of contributions to this community. Thank you so much, Russ.
So I think, if my baseball mind is working okay, if that was the pinch hitter batting third, Chuck D'Angelo is batting cleanup for us next.
I acknowledge that right away. Class act with the production. Greg Peterson, the Degnans, and whoever else did this. This is a keepsake. Hi, Pat. It's good to see hello to all my friends here. My relationship with Russ is a lot different than everybody else in this room. While all of us have been touched by Russ in many ways, I met him a different way. I was part of the Dirty 2 Dozen at Ellen Park Gully, and Russ was trying to get us on the straight and narrow because we were ornery little kids. We kept the staff busy when Russ was in charge of the parks, removing the park benches from the Ellen Park Tunnel, if you remember, Russ. That became a full-time job for your staff. Interestingly, Russ knew how to talk to teenage kids, and I was one of those kids. He was one of the first adults that I was not related to or knew that seemed genuinely interested in us and me. Fast forward by the grace of Russ Diethrick and Bonnie Majors, Pat Kinney, I was brought in to work at the Parks Department office. It was my first office job. I was 15 years old. It might have been 16. I don't think so. I think I was 15. And I ran a project that Russ blessed me with called Project Yes. We employed hundreds of young people doing park work during the summer. Obviously, we need a program like that today for the kids instead of sitting around during the summer playing games. Along the way, I went to Diethrick College. It's a high-esteemed college. I learned to always treat people with respect. I was told not to make excuses, make results. And he told me that it was important that I'd be proud to be a servant to the public. Smile every day when you serve the public. Don't make any excuses. Now, I'm going to tell you, what you probably already sensed, I was not the best kid at 16 to 17 years old. Some say I'm still not, by the way. But Russ sees things in people that most people don't see. It's 1973. I got suspended at Jamestown High School because I was smoking in school. Again, why is Russ associating with this kid? Russ understood how to deal with that kind of problem. Russ said, you're not going to serve your I think it was a 2 or 3 day suspension. You're going to come to work for the Parks Department. So I did. He handed me a pair of pliers and said, we just bulldozed a bunch of trees on Allen Park tot lot. You got to pull all of those roots out of that lot over there by hand. 2 to 3 days later, and a lot of blisters, I was smiling to myself saying, boy, did he know how to teach me a lesson. By the way, my wife defended me this morning. She said, I don't think you were smoking. I think it was the other guy. You took the hit for the other kid. I said, well, thanks, Deb. Common knowledge, Russ loved the parks. He did everything possible to keep the parks going in Jamestown and well-preserved. And the people who are in public service today and past, like Sam Teresi, Kim Eklund, and PJ, Andy Goodell, know that keeping public funds for parks is no small effort. It takes a lot to keep expenses down and to keep investments in. Russ lived by those parks. And when Russ Diethrick and those others were involved in the parks to this day, we have one of all the most beautiful parks in New York State, in Jamestown, New York. Russ, you set me on a course that I would never, ever have been on but for you. I don't know why God blessed me with you, but he certainly did. If you look back at a lot of people, there's a lot of Chuck D'Angelos out there, and I think Greg blessed me with asking me to say something today because I represent all those kids that you took care of over the years that nobody else would have paid attention to, but Russ Diethrick did. I love you, friend. Thank you very much for everything you did for me.
I think that was a grand slam, if I've heard one. So next up, he's shortstop in your program, which I think means that he's good with his hands, thinks on his feet, and is quick. Randy Anderson.
Today we gather to celebrate a remarkable milestone, the 90th birthday of a truly extraordinary man. It is an honor to stand before you and to reflect on the life of a person who has profoundly impacted our community and the lives of so many. Russ was born on October 9th, 1934, a date that marks not just the beginning of his journey, but the beginning of countless stories filled with dedication, resilience, and kindness. Over the past 90 years, Russ has not only witnessed history unfold, but he has also been an integral part of it, shaping the community that we cherish today. Throughout his life, Russ has been a beacon of integrity and leadership. His career has been marked by innovation and excellence, as he has tirelessly contributed his skills and expertise to various organizations. But what really sets Russ apart is his unwavering commitment to helping others, whether through mentorship, volunteer work, or just being a good friend. Russ has always been there, offering guidance and support. To know Russ is to know the meaning of generosity. He embodies the spirit of giving, not just in terms of resources, but through his time and wisdom. He has inspired many, instilling values of hard work, compassion, and community service in everyone fortunate enough to cross his path. His legacy is a testament to the difference one individual can make in the lives of so many others. Most of you may be surprised to learn that in the early 50s to the late 60s,
there was a Jamestown Sports Hall of Fame. You will not be surprised to learn that Russ was an inductee of that organization. In 1981, Russ had the vision to form the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame. Using the ideas of the Jamestown Sports Hall of Fame, but expanding it to include the whole county. Now, 43 years later, I'm proud to say we are successfully continuing and building on Russ's vision. Russ served on the board of directors of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame for 32 years, including multiple terms as president, vice president, and secretary, and for the past 10 years has been director emeritus of our organization. In recognition of his decades of contributions to sports in our community, Russ was selected as an enshrinee of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame very first induction class. Russ, the Sports Hall of Fame honors your life, your achievements, and the indelible mark you left in our hearts. You are a source of inspiration to us, and we are grateful for every moment you shared with us. May this milestone bring you health, joy, and the love of all those around you. On behalf of the Board of Directors of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, I wish you a very happy birthday, Russ. Here's to you, your legacy, and many more wonderful moments to come.
Our next batter needs no introduction except to say he's probably more comfortable in the announcer's box than he is in the batter's box.
Good evening, everyone. I am Dennis Webster. Russ, happy birthday for everyone in my family, all the people at WJTN and Media One Radio, an organization that I worked for many years, having left the industry just a couple of months ago. I want to tell you about some events that I witnessed a few decades back at WJTN. Ron Page, an entrepreneur and businessman in the community, came up with an idea in the early 1990s to do a radio show that would feature the stories of people's lives in the community and beyond. As that concept developed, it led to the pairing of the legendary Mr. Jamestown, Russ Diethrick, with the legendary WJTN announcer Jim Roselli. The program took its name from the old Paul Anka hit, The Times of Your Life. Everyone in Jamestown knew Russ Diethrick, and everyone knew Jim Roselli. They had certainly been involved in projects before, the Babe Ruth World Series, the annual Allen Park Easter egg hunt, radio broadcasts on WJTN, Special Olympics roller skating award ceremonies, and the like. But up until that time, no one had suggested that Russ and Jim worked together regularly on a radio show. The idea to pair up these two community leaders was brilliant. The Times of Your Life radio shows that Jim and Russ did were informative, unpredictable, and magical. Part of the magic came from the personalities of the two interviewers. Talking to people was Jim Roselli's stock and trade. He was a master in getting those people that he spoke to open up about their lives. So, it's Saturday morning. They got a guy named Jeff on the air. I'm watching through the glass in the adjacent studio. Mr. Diethrick would sit quietly, almost motionless, as Jim laid the groundwork for the interview, firing question after question. At a certain point, Roselli would make the toss. Russ, buddy, what do you think? At this point, I wasn't sure Russ was really in the same space with all the rest of us. But I needn't have worried. After a little pause, Russ would gently lean into the microphone and say something like, Jeff, what is it in your family background that makes you so passionate about this? It's a show-stopping, illuminating moment. Next week, different subject, different interviewee, it's Jill. Roselli's in there doing his thing, setting him up, knocking him down. After a little while, he's got to come up for air. So he turns to Russ and he says, Russell, this is a great interview. I'm sure you've got a question for Jill. Again, the pause. Russ leans in. Jill, these things you're talking about, working toward, have you ever seen them come to fruition? Suddenly, everything in the room changes color, but for the paint on the walls, with these provocative, insightful moments. This went on for virtually every Saturday from 10 to 11 a.m. on WJTN from the early 1990s till the time that Roselli died in 2016. And Russ continues this work on the Times of Your Life today with Andrew Hill. To be serious for a moment, I recall an off-the-air conversation I had with Roselli one day in which Jim expressed deep gratitude to Ron Page for the idea of linking him with Russ. What resulted was not just a radio show, but a deep and loving friendship. You know what it's like to be around a pair of people who belong together. They care for each other in a very deep and profound way. I felt that between the two of them every time that I encountered what I came to call the R&D department, Roselli and Diethrick. Now, the booking agent in those early years for the Times of Your Life was Jim Roselli's wife, Kathy. Russ, Kathy says hello and happy birthday and recalls all that you did for her dad, Andy Bilgren, in getting lights in Bergman Park. I would like to thank you for all the lights you lit with those extraordinary questions out of left field on the radio. Happy birthday, my friend.
We're sorry that Chuck Sinatra can't be with us today, but we're very excited to call up our next batter, who I would say is more of a mascot for all of the senior services in our community, Ellen Cafaro.
I just said I don't know if I fit in this group. Russ, I'm here as an official from the Office for the Aging today. Mary Ann is in Greece and sends greetings. Dana is in Buffalo. She could not get out of whatever she had to do in Buffalo. So I am very proud and privileged to read this letter that Dana has written. For me, I'm reading it as the chairman of the Office for the Aging Services Board. A happy birthday to you from the entire staff of the Chautauqua County Office for the Aging Services. Dana Corwin, the current interim director, along with Dr. Mary Ann Spanos, past director for the past 17 years, would like to extend many birthday blessings to Mr. Russell Diethrick. Our current advisory board chairman has graciously attended to deliver our message in person tonight as Dana and Mary Ann could not be here. Mr. Diethrick, Russ has been an integral part of the Office for Aging Services for as long as I remember. And I started in 1985. He has served on the advisory board and was part of the beginning of the Office for the Aging Board and the Office for Aging itself in 1973. Russ has served the agency in many ways: search committees for directors, advisory board member for OFA, United Senior Council member, special task force for aging in our county, and many, many more, as most of you have heard today. He has represented our older adults, and he's offered great insights and thoughtful approaches to changes for the agency. It was Russ who offered up the change in our name to the Office for Aging Services, noting that we were all aging and we did not want to include or use wording that gave over to ageism. Leave it to Russ. Our new name came from his consideration and reflection on the mission of the Office for the Aging Services to guide, connect, and advocate for long-term services and supports to help older Americans, older adults within our community. Russ is a man committed to his community as demonstrated by a lifetime of service with numerous organizations. He is a gentleman in every sense of the word, and is sought after as an influencer in the community. He received the 2023 New York State Office for the Aging Services Older Americans Award, and I am proud to have been on that committee that selected Russ. And the New York State Governor's Exemplary Service Award. We would like to thank him for his service to the Office for Aging Services and wish him the best birthday ever. May you be gifted with life's biggest joys. You yourself are a gift to us at the OFAs. You deserve the best. Happy birthday, Russ, to our dear friend. I also would like to take this time, and it is my privilege to say that I've worked with Russ since 1985 or before. We go back to the Jamestown Senior Center on 5th Street with Dorothy Brooks. We moved to the Crystal Ballroom, where we were friends and proud to be working with Wendy Frazier. We did a lot of things at the Crystal Ballroom, our dinners, our dances, our programs, and I was privileged to be on that board for a while with them. And I was part of this because I was the director of the Retired and Senior Volunteer Program. I came in '95. That's how far back we go. I also wanted to thank you for all of the work you've done for United Senior Council. You and I know what an important part that is of this community. We work with a lot of seniors. We are part of the statewide organization. And Russ has been an integral part of that program for all of the years and has been the treasurer for that program until this very past fall, or spring, I guess I should say spring. But I thank you, Russ, your kindness, your generosity, and I go back when we were with Wendy Frazier and June came into the picture. I remember you from back then, June. We appreciate all of your kindness. And when I was working up the little bit that I have put to this, there's a little girl on TV whose father is Steve Hartman, and she always says, be kind. Be kind to everyone. Russ, you are that. You are kind to everyone. I've never heard you raise your voice, even in mentoring with someone who really needed a little mentoring. I thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope that your walks in the next 10 years or so will be wide and varied, but I know they'll be to the baseball field. Thank you, Russ, for letting me be part of this.
Like so many of us here today, Russ is a proud Jamestown Rotarian, and I'll call up Marion Beckering to speak next.
Well, I feel at a little bit of a disadvantage not having known Russ for the number of years that he's contributed to this community, but I can say that for me, Russ was always the quintessential Rotarian, and so as the current president of the Rotary Club, I'm honored to be able to share some remarks about you. As some of you may or may not know, Russ has been a Rotarian for 48 years, joining the club in 1976 and, not surprisingly, being sponsored by John Hamilton. So within 6 years of joining the club, Russ became the president from 1982 until 1983. And shortly thereafter, he became not one, not two, but a 3-time Paul Harris Fellow. And for those of you who aren't aware of what that means, that's a contribution to the Rotary Foundation in support of the environment, maternal health, clean water, building peace, environmental development, and literacy that will contribute to the world. One of the most important things, however, to me, that Russ embodies are the values of the four-way test that every Rotarian pledges every week. And for me, that is, he always speaks the truth. He operates with fairness. He serves to build goodwill and better friendships. And his actions are beneficial to all concerned. Russ, thank you for all that you do in this community and for inspiring us to lean towards the better angels of our nature. It is my honor to celebrate your 90 years of a life well led. Happy birthday, Russ.
Like every starting pitcher, I have a pitching coach who taught me how to MC events like this. Randy Sweeney, would you come on down?
For those of you that have known Russ, have you ever seen Russ show up with notes before he had to make a speech? No. So, Russ, I had to do this with no notes because that was the only way I could honor you. So, this is something I don't normally do. Many of you don't know, I have a community dictionary at home, and many of you are in my community dictionary. And when it was time, to honor Russ, I leafed in my dictionary to his name, and you know what it said? It said, always thinking of others. So I started to think back of when I first had my opportunity to interact with Russ. It was in the early 1980s. I was a grocery buyer at the old Quality Markets, and I got a call one day. There was going to be a Babe Ruth World Series. And think of how much Russ had on his plate with his first Babe Ruth World Series. But he calls and he says, we're going to be putting all these young men in these host families. Host families are going to be taking care of them during the World Series, and wouldn't it be great if Quality Markets could provide some food for them? So, with Russ's always thinking of others, thinking of the host families, realizing how much he had to do, I made a number of phone calls, and we gathered up a lot of many bags of groceries and delivered them to the host families. And so every time there was a Babe Ruth World Series, I knew I'd get that call, and I knew how I needed to attack that, and was so happy to do that. And that was my first time I got to know this gentleman, Russ Diethrick. But as we got to know each other a little better, there was a program out there, once again, Russ Thinking of Others. The DARE program. You might remember the DARE program back in the 1980s. Sometimes I think we should still have that DARE program. And that dealt with, educating young people about the nastiness and the terrible effects of drugs. And Russ and I got to spend quite a bit of time working on that DARE program. We worked with the Sheriff's Department, and at the county level, we also worked with the Lakewood Bustye Police Department, Ellen Barnes, if you remember. We spent quite a bit of time, again, always thinking of others. Again, thinking of young people. In 1999, I decided to join the Rotary Club at Jamestown, and Marion just highlighted Russ's involvement there. And guess what? There's Russ sitting at the table. And during that period of time, right up to the present, he still is there on Mondays. He always finds a microphone, which might surprise you, and he always shares some heartfelt thoughts about something the club is doing. He's always thinking of others. And Russ, I thank you recently as you allowed me to join you on the mission of getting this Tarp Skunk baseball team going, and I enjoy our board meetings. And what you don't all know is how he continues to stop us in the middle of a conversation and will highlight something that would affect young people to the game of baseball. So, Russ, happy birthday, and thank you on behalf of the community on helping all of us to know what a good example of always thinking of others.
So I tried to learn the signal for when I need the closing pitcher or a relief pitcher, but then now is the time for that. So here comes the closer for us, Greg Peterson.
Tori Ergang, that was remarkable how she segued all of those baseball mentions and baseball opportunities, because you know why she's doing it? Because she was working me. You know why she was working me? Because she wants to throw out the first pitch at the first game of the 2025 fifth anniversary season. So I really see virtually most all our board members here, so I think that's a good go. Mr. Baseball, my golly, if there's anybody here who took us to a new level of baseball in Jamestown from the hard times. There were very hard times, and most of you may not remember in the history of baseball, but we had lost baseball. We had actually lost professional baseball in the 1950s, 1957. So there was a gap. And in 1961, through a very well-placed phone calls, Russ Diethrick, then working with the city of Jamestown, was able to convince the team to come here. And thereafter, from 1961, pretty much nonstop, a continuum has occurred of baseball here at College Stadium, and then we'll hear later a little bit what happened in 1997, where it became the Russell E. Diethrick Park. But the guy behind it at all times was our honoree tonight, Russell Diethrick, from the Falcons, the Tigers, the Dodgers, the Braves, the Red Sox, the Expos, the Pirates, and currently the Tarp Skunks. For those who were part on, and many of you are here, part of that, we thank you for the continued support of the Jamestown Tarp Skunks. But when that call was made to see if there would be interest in that continuing of the continuation, the first call was made to Russell Diethrick. The guy who gave the first check to support that was Russell E. Diethrick, Jr. He's a guy who really walks the walk, and it's by that leadership. And I might add that when there were many times in the past, those dark days, when in fact the budgets had to be met, because he wanted to make sure everybody was made whole. If you were investing in baseball in Jamestown, those vendors would be made whole. Sometimes they came up short. The budget was delivered and there would be some red ink on that. And there was no money to pay for those. The guy who reached into his pocket annually and without any fanfare and would not want me to talk about it now, but I will. It was Russell E. Diethrick, Jr. And we're just so thrilled that he's been part and parcel of it and has earned on so many fronts. I talk a little bit about the professional side of this, Mr. Baseball, but he's earned that moniker. He really has. And I'm going to call up now Mr. Mike Bellani, because Mike Bellani was the general manager extraordinaire, the P.T. Barnum of baseball in Western New York. When you think of those golden halcyon days of the 1980s, when in fact they drew 1 million people every year, and no other team had ever done that ever, and they did that for 4, maybe 5 years, it was Mike Bellani. And during that period of time, he worked for the Riches, Bob and Mindy Rich, and we were privileged in 1994 to be part of their ownership structure. The Riches brought the franchise down from Niagara Falls to here, and it was Russ and I and others who were part of in welcoming Mike Bellani, and they came down with a tremendous vision and a vengeance, and all of that's happened. But to pay tribute, one of the quickest calls and the quickest answers I received that he would come down from Buffalo without any hesitation was Mike Bellani. Mike, do you want to join us, please?
Thank you very much, Greg, and great to be back home here in Jamestown. To my fellow Rotarian, Russ, happy birthday. Yeah, Greg is right. It was back in the fall of 1993 when I was Vice President General Manager of Rich Baseball Operations. And at that time, the Rich family had wanted to bring Major League Baseball to Buffalo, and its goal was to own its entire minor league system, which would have been one of the few major league teams to do that. We had the AAA team in Buffalo, a AA team in Wichita, Kansas, and a single-A New York Penn League team in Niagara Falls. At that time, Major League Baseball did not own all the minor leagues like they do today, but they did send out a mandate that you had to bring your field and your clubhouses up to standards, and if anyone had ever been to what is now Sal Magley Stadium, back then it wasn't. And so league president Bob Julian, who was the commissioner of your league that the Tarp Skunks is in today, was the league president of the New York Penn League back then. So he came in Niagara Falls, and he's an attorney, and him and I walk into the city hall to see Mayor Jake Polillo. And I'm Italian, he's Italian, and Bob and I are dressed in suits, and Jake comes walking in with his big, long, 2-foot-long cigar, unlit, and his brother was the fire commissioner or whatever. He was, a typical, here, take this job, knew nothing about it, but he was, still doing it. So Jake looks at his brother and said, look, the suits are here. Come on in, let's see how they're gonna try to shake us down. So, Julian looks at me and, it was comical. So we walk in and we said, Mr. Mayor, you've received many letters, you haven't responded to any, but, we're now down to the deadline. We have a league meeting tomorrow night, and are you going to make these changes to the stadium for next year's season? And he said, well, what will happen if I don't? He said, I don't like being threatened. He said, well, the commissioner said, well, then, we would have to consider that tomorrow, but that it's mandatory, and if you don't, the ball club, the lease is up, they have the opportunity to move. And he stands up and he looks, he says, no one threatens Jake Polillo. So we said, okay, very good, thank you. So the meeting ends after about 5 or 10 minutes. Well, Bob had told me that the Montreal Expos had just moved the New York Penn League franchise that was here in Jamestown to Burlington, Vermont, and it had been here, its home, since 1977. And I said, well, that's interesting. So I immediately, proving that God is good to those who are good to him, I called up a good friend of mine, Vince McNamara, who was a former president of the New York Penn League. And I said, Vince, we just met with the mayor of Niagara Falls, and Vince was very close to us, and he knew everything that was going on. I said, we had just met with the mayor of Niagara Falls, and it doesn't look good here. We have a league meeting tomorrow. The president said that there's a vacancy of a franchise in Jamestown, and we'd like to pursue that. What could you tell us about Jamestown? And he said, his answer was simple. He says, Jamestown has one of the finest gentlemen in the game of baseball, from playing a pivotal role in building and maintaining the Babe Ruth World Series, which involves the youth in the game of baseball. And not only was he pivotal in the game with these young people, but he taught them lessons of life. And really, as we heard here today, he did that with all the youth here in Jamestown. And not only was it a tournament, a World Series that came here and used the park, but because of Russ's quiet leadership and going to our pal Randy at the grocery and, making sure that they were fed right. He quietly worked this committee to make sure that the World Series became community-owned and that the community embraced them and that the players used to love coming to Jamestown. He also said that Jamestown had a long history in the New York Penn League and that the fellow behind it all, the sort of the patriarch of professional baseball here in Jamestown, was Russ Diethrick. So I said, well, that is all I really need to hear. So I called a fellow that I learned about who he was from the legal counsel of Rich Products, Bill Giesel, who called me in 1985. We had an old timers game at Old War Memorial Stadium, and he said, I need you to add a name to the media list. Full access. He'll have a camera, he needs full access to everything. I'm like, wow, we've got the New York Times writer, photographer coming in. I said, fine, no problem. What's his name? And he said, Greg Peterson. Okay, write it down. What's his affiliation? Doesn't matter. Just make sure the pass is there. And that began a long series of, headaches and friendships of, sir, you can't be going, that's Joe DiMaggio. You can't be sitting there interviewing Joe DiMaggio instead of, he isn't talking to anybody, and suddenly he's talking to Greg. So I said, geez, I like this guy. So in any event, we called Greg up and we said, we understand that, there's a void of a franchise here. And he said, yes, there is. I said, well, there's a league meeting tomorrow, and we'd like to make a motion to move Niagara Falls to Jamestown. And he said, well, that would be great. So we did that. It was a unanimous decision and a unanimous vote. We called him, we said, well, you now have a baseball team again. And he immediately, as Greg does, called probably half of the people in this room to come to a meeting. And that was really the first of many associations with all of you that I had. And when I walked into wherever it was, the only person that I really wanted to see, and not offending anyone else, but was Mr. Diethrick. And meeting Russ and his the coach of Team Diethrick, his lovely bride June, was a great experience. And in the nearly 30 years that I've come to know him, and it's sad that my wife is not here with me today, because in the years that she would come down here, she was always impressed with meeting a person who's living and able to come here and walk and talk, and his name's on the ballpark. She said, wow, that was really cool. But she just really loved the community and all the neat people that were here, as I did. But in closing, the best description I can give of this gentleman is, in my dictionary, next to the words class, humble, and professionalism, is a photo of Russell E. Diethrick, Jr. Russ is truly Jamestown's Mr. Baseball. And as a gift, Russ, I have this bat that's made by the Buffalo Bat Company. Now, unfortunately, as technology would have it, my buddy who owns this company, the laser printer that we'll have on here, and I have a picture of it to prove that we're going to do it, but it says Jamestown's Mr. Baseball, Russell E. Diethrick, Jr. The laser printer broke, and the part hasn't come in, and the guy was like crying on the phone this morning, saying, I know it'll be in today. It isn't. But the good news is that, Russ, the guy's like panic. I said, no problem at all. I said, I'll show him what the bat looks like. But the good news of it is when it comes in the next day or so, it means I have to come back and we could get Greg to host a dinner for us. Thank you very much.
You'll see I got a little change up in the lineup here. That's one of the benefits of being at this part of the management here. Christian Doles will be joining us right at the very end of this program. Now, we have a message from somebody near and dear to you, Russ. That's Dan Lanetta. Now, Dan really wanted to make the effort to get here. Funny thing happened. Some of our beloved Detroit Tigers are in the playoffs. And as we speak, they are playing in Detroit. And as we speak, I won't tell you the score because I don't want to jinx where they are at currently, but it's good news. So Dan wanted to at least make sure his presence was felt. He sends his heartfelt greetings. And if the Tigers were not playing right now, he would otherwise be here. But anyways, here's a video message to you, Russ.
Hi, Russ. I just wanted to send along a heartfelt happy 90th birthday. I'm sorry that I am unable to be at the birthday party for you. We have this little thing going on called the playoffs here in Tiger Town. And we're also dealing with this monstrosity called Hurricane Milton down here in Florida, which is well on its way. Russ, I know you've meant so much to so many in the community throughout the years, myself included, because without you, I don't know where my baseball path would have taken me. So I owe you a debt of gratitude, my friend. And I know you're known to so many as Mr. Baseball, including me, but more importantly, I'm so proud to be able to call you my friend. Have a great 90th birthday celebration, and go Tigers. Bye, Russ.
Now let's talk about the human side of Russ Diethrick. What's this? This isn't on the program. Folks, I apologize.
Oh, you got rid of me, didn't you?
Yes. Thought I had a key to the door.
They didn't lock the door tonight. They let me in. For those of you who don't know who I am, through previous engagements, Mr. Diethrick had a son. And if you think Roselli's going to be long,
I want to hear this.
you people make me sick. You're making him out to be some sort of god. Well, I'm here to straighten things out.
Where's Harry Smith?
The man just doesn't shut up. You ever been downtown? You sit there and say, "Hi, Russ, how you doing?" Half hour later, you're still not sure. Ever tried to talk to him downtown? You sit there and you say, "Hi, Russ, how are you?" One old lady comes up, "Hi, Russ, how are you?" An old man comes up, "Hello, Russ, how are you?" Everybody comes up and says, "Hi, Russ." You're still not sure if you're talking to him or not. You're just part of a big crowd that came down there. The first time I heard the man speak, I was sitting there and I'm thinking to myself, this guy is really good. Eloquent, uses all the right words, the whole 9 yards. Even has a little bit of magic with him. You know, you sit there and you know when Tinkerbell comes on those Peter Pan movies, you hear that little jingling sound? I'm listening to him speak and I'm waiting for Santa Claus to come out because I hear the Let me tell you a secret. When he's got change in his pocket, that's what it is. He's playing with the change in his pocket. Let me tell you another secret. The Babe Ruth World Series Committee knows that if he's got $1.75 or more in his pocket, it's worth at least 45 minutes of speech. And that's the truth. What Bonnie has found, and also Chuck Tilford has found, if you go up to him before a speech and ask him for change for $1, the speech is a lot shorter.
We were hacked. I can't believe it. Now I'd like to call up Sam Teresi. Sam, mayor for many, many years, but more importantly, as part of the Department of Development, worked very, very closely with Russ Diethrick on many, many fronts. And we thought it was a great opportunity for him to share some memories, and we'll pick up from there. Sam Teresi.
Happy birthday. And like my friend Chuck D'Angelo up there, I also count myself amongst Russ's kids. He's had a tremendous impact on my life, going back to the 1971, the age of 10. Hadn't quite turned 11 yet, but I won't get into the details on that. Didn't even meet him at that time, but he changed my life for the better that time, and all of our engagements throughout. As a friend, most importantly, as a fellow city worker, a department head, being part of your Babe Ruth World Series Board of Directors, and then part of my administration as mayor in various capacities. You've been a wonderful friend, not only to me, but this entire community, and I don't consider you Mr. Baseball. I consider you Mr. Jamestown. I'd like to also recognize Tori Ergang and Craig Peterson for pulling this wonderful event together, and I am extremely humbled and grateful that you would include me in on the program this evening. My job tonight, however, is to share with you the story of how Jamestown Municipal Stadium, with a little interlude unofficially known as College Stadium, became Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. It was 1996. The city of Jamestown, I was 35 years old and 8 years into my job as Director of Development for the city of Jamestown. And the city of Jamestown was in perpetual financial turmoil at the time. Kim, count your blessings that it's not 1996 now. Things were a lot worse back then. And there was a lot of talk as to what we could do to straighten out the financial ship. I attended a meeting one late afternoon at the mayor's office as the director of development and other members of the mayor's cabinet with finance people and also a variety of community leaders. And the ideas were flowing as to what we could do. And it always seemed that the first on the list was close the stadium, shut down the stadium. The main tenant in the stadium is a guy on the Fortune 100 list. Have them take it over. Have them run the ballpark, own the ballpark, relieve us of those expenses. Obviously, folks didn't have any idea and clue as to what a ballpark like that, what's involved with it, and having a pro ball team in there, not to mention all the other community uses. The conversation then continued to meander and evolve to, why don't we just close the whole damn park system down? At this point in time, my blood started boiling, and I could barely contain myself before I got up and stormed out of the room. I threw my little speech out there about what it means to a race to the bottom, and cutting taxes to the bare bone minimum does not build a community, does not make a community worth living in. And then I hit him with a line that one of the most eloquent and thoughtful men ever left me. It's all about what we do to make our kids feel special. And it's our job and our responsibility to make sure that our kids have the opportunity to play on the field of their dreams. And I walked out of the meeting. And I went home and I immediately started ranting and venting. And my wife, Becky, looked at me and said, "Don't vent at me. Do something about it." So after dinner, I used one of my lifelines and I phoned a friend, Greg Peterson. And I said, Greg, I need your help on something. We'd worked together on a variety of things. The heretofore mentioned story about the Niagara Falls Rapids moving to Jamestown and becoming the Jammers. I was proud to be part of that team led by Mr. Diethrick and Craig Peterson and others. And I said, I got another one for you. You're free for breakfast first thing in the morning, 7:30 at the Holiday Inn. We met at the Holiday Inn the next morning and related to him what we just dealt with the day before. I said, obviously, these folks have no clues what they're talking about. And by the way, before I left the room, it had devolved down to the point of, we won't close the stadium, we won't close the parks. We will make up the budget deficit by selling the naming rights to College Stadium to a private business. Well, I related the story to Greg. We had a good chuckle about that as to what that would yield, maybe $10,000, $5,000. Not enough to close the city's budget deficit and its financial problems. And instead, our conversation turned to the naming of the stadium after the guy who saved baseball in Jamestown, and that there would be no stadium there at all had it not been for Russell E. Diethrick Jr. on many, many accounts over the past. It's all contained in this book. This is the second edition with the Scott Kinberg written addendum to it. A fellow named David Muley. First version of it was called Across the Seams. Randy, you still have copies available at the Hall of Fame for sale? Perfect. Go to the Hall of Fame. Buy this book. Read this book. It tells the story and verifies everything that has been mentioned tonight about this man, his place in this community, and there's more mentions of Russ Diethrick in this book than I can count at many different intervals. There would be no baseball in Jamestown and no College Stadium at the time had it not been for the man sitting here in the front row whose birthday we are celebrating tonight. Greg and I then batted around a variety of ideas and said we need to come up with a group to get this done. Number one, it's the appropriate thing to do. Number two, it will save the ballpark once again. The man will save the ballpark again for us. So we started pulling together a few people. Number one on the list was June. Bonnie Majors. Chuck D'Angelo. Chuck the Man. Rod Drake. Needed Rod from Habiterra and his boys from Habiterra because they'd done all that work at the stadium over the past decade to keep it a functional facility. And they allowed me to stay in the room as well. Everybody had an assignment. Chuck and Greg were involved with raising funds because our game plan was to come up with new signage for the ballpark, a new reader board sign out in front of the ballpark, and to plan an event to rename the ballpark. I think Bonnie and June had the toughest job of all. They had to keep Russ not knowing what was going on and keep Russ under wraps because Russ would have never agreed to this in a million years. You guys had the tough job. My job was to park the cars and stay the hell out of everybody else's way. Actually, my job was to try to navigate this through the political maelstrom of City Hall at the time. Well, what we ultimately came up with, after a variety of discussions, trying to figure out what we wanted to name the place. Was it going to be Russell Diethrick Stadium, Russ Diethrick Field? And my idea at the time simply was Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. Number one, Comiskey Park, Fenway Park, baseball's played in the park. Russ Diethrick dedicated his life to building the single greatest public park system in the state of New York. And the first incarnation of the signage we came back just said Russ Diethrick Park on it. I said, that'll never fly with the man. Because if he told me once, he told me a million times, there's only one Russ Diethrick, and it's not me. And I could never fill Russ Diethrick's shoes. That's why I have the name Junior. So we insisted on it being named Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. Then we had to come up with a way of keeping this a surprise because everybody, starting with Bonnie and June, insisted that it be a surprise. Now, how in the world are we going to keep this a surprise from Russ Diethrick? Well, apparently we thought we pulled it off. We are in 1997 now, and somehow I had convinced the members of the city council and the mayor and his administrative team on the name change. And it needed city council action because most people thought the stadium was owned by the college because it had appropriated the unofficial name of College Stadium when the campus was built down there in the early 1960s. But when that stadium opened on May 6, 1941, it was officially and legally, and to that date of August 9th, 1997, was Jamestown Municipal Stadium. So there was a role for the city council to play in the renaming of the park. And what we decided we would do is piggyback off of an event that was being held by the Jamestown Jammers that night to honor the man who had just been inducted into the Babe Ruth Baseball Hall of Fame. The induction ceremony occurred before the game, and out onto the field walked the entire Jamestown City Council and the city clerk with this notice being read. Please take notice that a special meeting of the Jamestown City Council will be held on August 9th, 1997 at College Stadium in Jamestown, New York, pursuant to Section C20 of the city charter to discuss and take action on an extremely important matter. Now that violated every tenet of the New York State open meetings law. You have to specifically say what is on the agenda that night, but it also fell in my lap to go talk to Christy Herbst, the editor of the paper, and Don Meyer, the publisher of the Post-Journal at the time, to see if we could have this buried in the legal notice section of the Post-Journal with that very broad and nondescript explanation of what the agenda was. And it was signed City Council President Mike Mistretta, Deborah Smith, Philip C. Morris, Anthony J. Raffa Sr., Carol A. Durr, Anthony P. Laguitas, James J. Ventura, William Escalati, and Andrew F. Johnson, Jr. The entire City Council sponsored this special meeting and sponsored the resolution that was unanimously adopted before a crowd of about 2,000 people at the Jamestown Jammers game that night. And what I'd like to do right now is to read you that resolution. In council, August 9th, 1997, whereas Russell E. Diethrick Jr. has been the primary force in keeping professional baseball in Jamestown through his devotion to the game and through personal financial sacrifice. And whereas Russell E. Diethrick Jr. has been personally responsible for bringing the Babe Ruth Baseball World Series to Jamestown at regular intervals over the past 2 decades. And whereas Russell E. Diethrick Jr.'s love of the game has been reflected in his tireless efforts to upgrade, renovate, and improve the College Stadium baseball facility for the enjoyment and safety of fans and baseball players alike, now therefore be it resolved that in permanent recognition and tribute to Russell E. Diethrick Jr. and for his monumental contributions to the game of baseball and to the renovations and improvements to Jamestown Municipal Stadium, College Stadium, is hereby rededicated and shall herever after be known as Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park, carried unanimously by the City Council. And just to hedge our bets, in case somebody was going to file a lawsuit to undo all of that at some point in the future, we had the City Council re-adopt that at their regularly scheduled meeting on August 11th, 1997. What I'd like to leave you with here today I want to encourage you sometime, the next time you're at Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park for a Tarp Skunks game next season, or maybe just tomorrow when you're riding around, drive down to the ballpark. There are 4 big bronze plaques on the outside wall of the stadium. 3 of the 4 have this man's name on the plaque. The first plaque was from May 6th, 1941, opening and dedicating Jamestown Municipal Stadium. The name of the mayor, all the city council members, the Parks Commission, and a citizens committee. The second plaque was from the first wave of renovations in 1984. Rod remembers that because he and his partners at Habitera Associates here in Jamestown, Bob Arnone and Paul Hedin in particular, were the architects behind that plan. And every other ballpark improvement program that has happened since 1984 at now Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. It commemorated that round of renovations. And Russ Diethrick's name is on that plaque as the Director of Parks, Recreation, and Conservation. Russ insisted that his title not be Parks Director, but wanted to make sure the word conservation always remained in the title of the department and his position, and is thereby emblazoned on that plaque. Third plaque was to dedicate another round of renovations, major renovations, that Rod and Habitera helped quarterback in 2001. But the fourth plaque, and in my feeling, the most significant and important one, reads this: rededicated August 9th, 1997, as Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park, Mr. Baseball, fan, player, manager, owner, supporter, organizer, and most importantly, the word friend. City Parks, Recreation, and Conservation Department Director, Babe Ruth Baseball Incorporated Hall of Famer. In my book, that pretty much says it all. Thank you, Mr. Jamestown, for your 90 years of gracing us with your presence, your work, your effort on behalf of this community, keeping baseball alive, and another plug for the Sports Hall of Fame and Scott Kinberg and David Muley. Go out and buy and read this book. It could be one of the most important books that you read as a local Jamestown booster. Thank you, and have a great evening. And Russ, on behalf of the city of Jamestown, that I no longer have the ability to make proclamations for, but I'd like to present this to you, which is a certified copy of the resolution from August 9th, 1997, changing the name of the ballpark and rededicating it in the honor of the only name that should ever grace that stadium wall.
Russ, I'm glad Sam brought up the book. 2 things. One is, this book doesn't happen, and nor does all the information that's in the book happen if you don't happen. That seems obvious. But most importantly, you don't happen without the support of June. I mean, let's just pause and respect that. I must make an admission. I am the only one. I am it. Number one, the only guy to use harsh language with Mr. Diethrick. And you, Mr. Teresi, kind of triggered me because we were doing the book because of Mike Bellani. This all ties in. Mike Bellani decides we got to do something on the history of baseball. We have such a rich, pun intended, long baseball. We need to document this thing which Sam has just been touting. We interviewed 100 people or so, gathered notebooks, scrapbooks, scorebooks, you name it, in order to do the book which Dave Muley originally did, Across the Seams. We were gathering information, and there was several opportunities for me to invite Mr. Diethrick, who was only about 75% of the history, to come and do an interview at my office. And he said, no, I'm not going to do it. No, I can't do it. No, I don't know what he was doing. But he somehow couldn't find time. So finally, with the expletive almost deleted, I said, damn it, Russ, you got to come on and do that. Now, can you imagine anybody actually doing that to Russ? Nobody. I dare you to try that. I did it. Guess what? He showed up. And guess what? You are going to see some memories that he gave to us regarding his memories that were created at the stadium that continue to create memories for us.
On August 9th, 1997, College Stadium became a memory. As the program indicated, when you arrived, you entered College Stadium. When you leave, you will be exiting Russell E. Diethrick Jr. Park. May there be many more memories to come. Who is this extraordinary individual who has been acclaimed by one and all as Mr. Baseball?
I was born in Patton, Pennsylvania, which is down in probably the center part of the state. Better known a few miles from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, where the Johnstown Floods were. Sort of locates it in the state. Came to Jamestown when I was 5 years old. The family moved here because my father had been a coal miner, and the coal mines were petering out, so he came to Jamestown to find work, and we had families here. I guess you want to tie that to baseball and why I have an interest in it. I guess it was either in the water or in the air. I was born on October 9th, 1934, and that was a year, of course, the Tigers and the Cardinals were in the World Series. On October 9th, I think, was the last day of the series, and as I was waiting to come, and on that day when I was being born, my mother, during that World Series, as in other times, was keeping box scores over the radio for my father when he would come home from the coal mines. So I was born in the midst of all of that, so they always said that's why I had to be a baseball fanatic.
Who won?
Cardinals won that series. That's the year the Dean brothers won 2 games each.
Started me to be a baseball fan. I remember that Dizzy Trout, they struck Clem Pashorek out with a rosin bag. The crowd went crazy. And I remember my dad and I were leaving the stadium in the car, and the door burst open. I had no idea what was happening. And it was Dizzy Trout wanting a ride uptown. And we got, I think, out on Faulkner Street heading for uptown, and he saw somebody else. And he said, thank you, and he jumped out of the car and went, I don't know, was it one of the other ball players walking or just exactly what it was, but yeah, a short time that he was riding in the back of the car. And Lefty Gomez, who worked for Wilson Sporting Goods, and the leagues that used the Wilson ball, it was part of his responsibility to go into the towns and promote Wilson products and to be supportive of the baseball. And I remember he came to town one night, and it was a rainy night. In fact, the game got rained out eventually. But it started to rain just as getting ready to play ball, and Lefty come and he sat in the grandstand. And after about 20 minutes, we decided we had to cancel the game. And it was a pretty full grandstand, and some people in the bleachers. And so, I was going to be it, and Lefty says, we're not going to shut down. So he asked for the microphone. And we took the microphone down from up in the press box and fished the wire down to the screen, and he took the microphone and he invited everybody to come into the grandstand. And he sat there for well over an hour, probably an hour and a half, and kept house. And he just told baseball stories of his time with Babe Ruth, his memories in the major leagues, and I think a lot of stories he made up as he went along that night. But he just, to see that Hall of Famer sit there and do that for his love of baseball, and it was exciting when it was going on, but as years went on, it meant more and more and more to us.
Now I'd like to call up Christian Dolce, who is the general manager of the Jamestown Tarp Skunks, for a few words and a presentation.
Hi, everyone. I appreciate you all coming out here today to celebrate someone who's very near and dear to all of our lives. But first, everything that you've been waiting for, we're going to draw to see who wins the one of one, right? One of one? One of one signed Russell E. Diethrick Jr. baseball. So let's put up here. We'll see who's the lucky winner. Won't look. PJ Wendell, you've won it. There you go.
Throw it back.
Well, as you can see here tonight, everyone who spoke, and I'm sure everyone here in this crowd, has a very deep and special connection with Russ. Whether that is on a personal level or in some way, shape, or form working with your group or organization. And, looking around the room, I'm probably the youngest person here, and I've probably known Russ the least amount of time out of anyone here. But the impact that, you have had on my life and where I'm at today is, has been huge and something that I'm not sure you know, but it's been very, very, very big. I know that I wouldn't be standing here today if it wasn't for you and your hard work, whether that's through minor league baseball, helping keep the Tarp Skunks here, through Babe Ruth baseball, as I was a Babe Ruth World Series participant, and also through your work with the park system. So, a big thing that I think resonates throughout all those three different areas is the sense of community. And that's the goal that I want to be able to continue as general manager of the Tarp Skunks and keeping baseball here, is that we continue to keep the community relevant and we do this for the community. You set such a great foundation, and it's my job and all of our job within our Tarp Skunks organization to keep this going. So thank you for everything that you do. And on behalf of the Tarp Skunks and Jamestown Community Baseball, we want to present you with your very own Tarp Skunks jersey with your name on the back and your age. So thank you, Russ.
I have the final word in that we would be a much less of a community without the presence of Russ Diethrick. And we've been the beneficiaries of that for the past 90 years. And may we continue to be the beneficiaries for many, many more years to come. And as you are exiting tonight, I want to thank the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, as there is cookies, which have 90 on them, made by Vicki McGraw and Elegant Edibles. Please take that. And if you didn't get one of those baseball cards, this is the first edition. It's his rookie card, his rookie card. And if I see it on eBay, I'm tracking you down. This is a real testament to you, Russ, that all have come here from far and wide and made extraordinary efforts, but for an extraordinary man, for extraordinary reasons. And for that, we just say thank you, Russ Diethrick, and play ball. Thank you for coming.